isn't really me starting with a jolly good idea. It was me starting with a breakdown. So about 12 years ago, I had a massive breakdown, and it was burnout. It was my own fault. I did it to myself. The story's all in the book. I won't go on and on about it, but I just need you to know this wasn't a let's help all the mentally ill people. This was I can't actually live like this. This was what is well-being anyway? I've not even thought about it, the word even, until I didn't really have it. And I was, at the time I was a primary school teacher full-time, and I was loving it. I mean, I wasn't one of those primary school teachers, I'm sorry if you're one of them, that moan about teaching. I absolutely loved it. I loved every day of it. I've never had a day off work. I've got 3 kids. Lovely husband, live in Nottingham. And I was part of a Baptist church, and we were leading in the church as well, and I was living at Norwich. I did not spot that I was a human being. I'd forgotten. So nobody else was terribly surprised when I had a breakdown, but I was, because I hadn't been looking after myself very well. I burnt the candle at both ends, and to be honest, church was a big part of that. Sorry if that's offensive to you, but I want to change the world, and I want to see everybody come to know Jesus, and also I want to be the best mom and the best wife, and I wasn't the best in anything. And there was a day came when I just couldn't get out of my bed. I just couldn't do it anymore. And I'll tell you the straw that broke the camel's back. It makes me laugh now to think of it, because it's still good. What shall we have for tea? I slid down the work surface and sat on the kitchen floor and cried for an hour because I didn't know what to have for tea. Oh, this isn't right, hang on. And I took to the bed thinking I'll just have a little rest, and it was about a year. When I'm not saying I never got out of bed for a year, I mean that would be ridiculous. But I couldn't function in my life for about a year. And during that time, the most shocking thing was how hard I found my faith. Like, where was God? I was like brought up in the brethren, if that means anything to you. So, busyness was next to godliness, the word of God, do with quiet time, serve the Lord with gladness, the joy of the Lord is your strength, all that. And I'm glad for it, but it made me have this work ethic that made me forget that I was a human being first. And so I can remember thinking, I can't really read the Bible because I can't remember what I just read, what was the point, and I can't pray because I've got no words, and I feel guilty, and I feel like God's nowhere. And I can't go to church because when I go to church everyone was so nice. So don't get me wrong, I'm not saying the church is rubbish. The church was really lovely. I've been part of the same church for 30 years. And there was a lot of patting. I mean, you know what I mean. Those of you who've been there know what I mean, right? There was a lot of unsolicited praying. So I call it guerrilla praying. It's like, hang on, they're praying for me again, I didn't ask for it. And it was that kind of praying that made you feel like, it's not going to happen again, and they're going to feel bad, and I'm going to feel bad, and I'm going to say, yeah, thanks, I feel much better than he didn't. So I stopped going to everything, and I got very isolated, and I realised I wasn't the only person who felt like that. And that 1 in 4 people, even before a global pandemic, were struggling at some point in their lives with their mental and emotional health. And all the ways that we were working really hard, and we were working hard as church, was probably not going to scratch where it was itching for that quarter of the population. And it made me think, I wonder if there are other people who feel like I feel, and I wonder if we're all stuck at home trying to live better in our own skin. So for me, I learned to slow down, slow down and do some hobbies. So we'll talk about that later, and like Kate's just said, the heartbeat of a Renew Space is literally that. Place for people to just show up, bring a hobby, share a hobby. So for me, I like painting stones. Well, don't judge me on any of this. You all have your own. Painting stones, crochet, not at the same time, and furniture restoration. These things, I suddenly went, a bit of gardening. I thought, this is quite nice. And I had never slowed down enough to even take my own emotional temperature to realise what did me good. So I started doing those things, and then the sort of inner life of me, the bit that had been have a quiet time, observe the Lord with gladness, that took a bit of a nosedive, so I had to go, I know God's not left me. I know He must still be there, but I'm going to have to find a different way of talking to Him and listening to Him. And I came across contemplative prayer. So I'm so glad to be in a tradition now with most of you, where you didn't forget about the Psalms, or liturgy, or doing some sort of rhythm of prayer. I'm not often talking to people I come out of their charismatic background where actually they lost the baby out of the bathwater a long time ago. So I had to re-engage with things that have always been there from ancient times. So I found it really beautiful to read a psalm because he's really not okay a lot of the time, the guy writing the psalms. And I thought, oh, I can always pray, even if I'm feeling rubbish I can pray, because this gives me permission to. And I also found I could take a little tiny phrase from a psalm that was good and true and fix it in my mind so that I didn't have my mind going over and over and over how rubbish I was and how rubbish it was not to be able to get out of bed and all the things that I couldn't fix. I can't stop thinking about it. I'm a good worrier, but what I could do is replace it with something good and true. So this habit of just meditating on a phrase from a psalm every day. So what I did, I get bored easy, so I would take a phrase from a psalm, it's good and true, and I would fix that in my mind as I have my cuppa in the morning, sitting holding my cup, knowing my life is held. You'll see that in the book, it's a big deal for me. My life like a cup in God's hands, held in his hands, that's well-being for me. And I'd meditate on this little scripture by going over and over and over it. And then every time I made a cuppa, I would go, hang on, what's the thing? So, I don't know about you, but I can read something good and true, and 10 minutes later I've forgotten it, and I'm back to the, yes, but what am I going to do about my kids? And what will you have for tea? That. So, having a practice of constantly attaching a spiritual inner practice to an outer habit, it's really helpful. So if you forget everything else I say, do the cup thing. Sit still whilst you have your cuppa and attach to it a meditation that is. So every week I'd swap the meditation to the next psalm and we'd find another phrase and we'd use that one. I say we because I started wondering if there were other people who might like to join in and do that meditation thing with me. And I just put it out there with a few people I met in the car park at church who couldn't go in, those people. I just said, does anyone want to do this prayer thing with me? Because I'm finding it helpful for my well-being. And the house got a bit full. We called it the cup group. And we'd have a cup and we'd sit there with our cup and we'd all meditate a bit of a psalm. And a neighbour came and her sister came. And a lady who came and wasn't Christian, and we all were quite happy just to sit and do this thing together. And then I'd gone to retreat centres and found they do these rhythms of prayer I've never heard of. So, Psalm in the morning, Lord's Prayer at lunchtime, sorry I'm speaking to the converted, I know, I didn't know any of this one. And then end of the day, rewind the day with God, prayer of examine if you've ever heard of that. Loved it. It was like, I shouldn't have to drive to a retreat centre 500 miles away, which is what I have done. If I'm a Christian and I'm a part of a church, shouldn't this be what we're about? Shouldn't every place where there are God's people be a place where people can find his peace? Shouldn't that be our priority, to be the people with the presence of God? So, these were my habits and rhythms of prayer, and this was my habit with the cup and the meditation thing. There wasn't more than that, and then the hobbies. So a few hobbies, a little bit of meditation, little bit of rhythms of prayer, so I'd start, middle, end the day with a little prayer. And that's, if you wanted more than that, I haven't got any more than that. That was it for me. For me, that was my long journey back to some degree of recovery. I walk with an emotional link, I think I always will. I'm quite glad of it. I don't think the way I was living before was very healthy for anyone. It's certainly, when I was a leader, I wasn't really leading, I was going for a walk on my own. People were miles behind me because I couldn't keep up. This slow down enables you to be there with the people who can't go that fast with all your thinking. The showing up enabled me to have a hobby, something that was fun, that was good for my soul, that was good for my body, and that other people could join in with. And the praying, that's our whole language, isn't it? That's our best offer into the wellbeing conversation as church. So we're not the fourth emergency service. We haven't got something that will fix everybody. I mean, that wasn't the right answer, was it? The good brethren in me going, yes, the answer is always Jesus. Yes, the answer is always Jesus. But I was already a Christian and I had a breakdown. So I suppose just to run through this, what I wanted to do is just contextualise why we set up the charity in the first place. It wasn't setting up a charity. It was me trying to authentically live well in my own skin, and then my heart breaking for the fact that there were people around me who didn't know that God loved them that much. There was this little moment that happened about halfway through this terrible year, and I'm not pretending it was a wonderful year full of God's presence. It wasn't. I watched Dallas on repeat. But there was one moment, and I was writing in the journal, and I really do commend that to you as a practice, because when I read that back, it makes me weep because I realise God loves me. And I was writing in the journal, and going, I don't know what's happening here, and I can't do anything, and I pushed my journal to one side, and then suddenly felt like, well, God got his arms around me, that's how I can describe it. And I heard him say, almost audibly, Ruth, and I thought, here we go, get out of bed, get on with your life. No, he didn't say that. That was my inner monologue. He said, I could not love you anymore, I will never love you any less. And I was doing nothing. Reborn. Completely reborn. That's the gospel. Don't earn it, don't deserve it, loves us completely. Great, isn't it? So anything else I managed to do from that point on was a complete bonus. And all of this that happened was because I didn't have to do it. And because when I sit still and hold my cup, I know the world still spins on its axis. And I didn't make it happen. Because I spent a year in bed and everybody was fine. It's very humbling, actually, that. When the kids go, I don't really remember it, Mum. Where are you at? And I went, no, your dad was doing everything. Don't you remember? Doesn't it damage you for life? No, not really. So that whole thing of us being so important in the world, actually getting rid of the pressure of that, meant that we were able to do something that probably is quite important in the world. And I know that if I don't do it, someone else will pick up that and carry on. So, Renew 37 was born, and that was because I really fancied a place where it wasn't my front room. So again, selfish charity. Loved what I was doing, wanted other people to join it, didn't want to come to my house. This is sounding worse as I'm saying it, actually. And so I said to God, wouldn't it be great if we had a space where people could come, and there were some boundaries of time and place. And we didn't have a church building, so I couldn't use that. So God gave us this little place, which is on a high street in Nottingham, and it's next door to an existing tea shop, and the ladies who run it are Christians. They just went, Ruth, do you want to share this space with us? Does the church want to? They're really worried about mental health. They were really worried about people being isolated. People in your community are seeing it before the churches all the time, and they want to partner with us. So we took this place on, and 4 days a week the church ran it, and 3 days a week the cafe next door had it as extra cafe space. We shared the rent. That was how it worked. And then we were like, well, what do we do with it? So we were making it up as we went along. And the church, bless my little church. By this time I'd given up teaching for my mental health and I couldn't carry on. But the church had taken me on to lead them full time. That's how much they were. And they knew that I was on this kind of, I can't forget about what I've heard and seen. I can't forget about that person who can't get through the doors. I can't forget about that person who told me they don't hear their names spoken from one end of the week to the other. We have to do something different for them at least. So when we took this place on, the church wanted it to be this kind of multifunctional place where we could have church meetings, and I was like, no. I think it just needs to be somewhere where anyone can drop in. Places where somebody knows your name. I think it needs to be any faith in none, no proselytising, bring a hobby, share a hobby, come. I think it needs to feel more like a cafe and a shed for a room than it does a church. I think that will help people get through the door. And it did. And people used to come, and they'd just pop in and they'd bring their knitting, or they'd bring something they were working on at home, or they'd join in with a jigsaw. And we just got started. And next to it, in the same space that joined to it, was another room with the door left open, where I needed to go and pray, because I can't be that present to people for long without needing to go off and spend a bit of time with God. I think my social muscle was weakened through not being well, and there's been further weakened by COVID. And so it was a case of saying, we're going to need a quiet space. So if I'm being sociable, I'm then going to need to go off and have a minute, take a minute just to do a meditation, and then we can come back again. And maybe we could pause at the beginning and the middle and the end of the session, and you could do my rhythm of prayer with me. That was kind of all it was, really. But then we realised that the choice of social space and quiet space was all that people needed. The option to opt into the God story or not, just to have some company, meant people felt in control of the thing. And actually, it was really popular, and lots of people. And the best thing was, it felt good for me. I suddenly could function again. I could find a space where I could share my wellbeing story, not just with the church community, but with the wider community. And the mental health services at the time were biting our hand off to have a piece of this, because there was nowhere for people to go. And that's still going strong 7 years later, 4 days a week. 3 of us started it, 20 people around running it. That church is still doing that 4 days a week. I don't know many things that out-survive their founder, apart from the church, obviously. In fact, they haven't out-survived their founder, of course, he's still going strong. But that idea that you start something and it's based on one person's gift or skills or passion, and then it will go and it's hard work. That's not Renew. Renew, you need at least 2 people, 2 pulses, a place to be for at least 2 hours a week. That's all it needs. It's not lots and lots of skills. It is a willingness to show up.